Hey everybody. Okay, so I'm going to try and teach this a little different than I have in the past. So today will be a little bit of overview. So what I would ask you to do right now is to kind of sit back, relax, and just try and understand what it is I'm trying to tell you. I wouldn't take a whole lot of notes. I would just trying to sit there and comprehend what it is I'm trying to get you to do, what I'm trying to, the connections I'm trying to have you make. Because this is a type of activity where when you're actually in the classroom, if you have to teach this content, you'll decide if this is going to be worthy of your time. So at the beginning here, all I want you to do is just trying to follow along with what I'm doing. Then if you want to stop it and write some stuff down, you certainly can. Okay, so real quick, what I'm going to do is I'm going to review what we had done in the past using base 10 blocks. So if you recall, we were calling this little teeny tiny wooden one here, we were calling that one a unit. All right, so we called that a 1 or a unit. And then the next bigger shape that we used was when we had 10 of those lined up, and those 10 created what we called a long. And in base 10, we would call this a 10. So whatever base you're in, that's the size of the long. So if I'm in base 3, then there'd be 3 of these. 3 of these. If I'm in base 7, there'd be 7 of these to make a long. And once you got to the 8th one, it would no longer make a long, it would make a long with some extras. So this is the maximum number of units that can fit inside of a long. So we call this one a 10 in base 10. And then once I had one of these, once I had 10 of those, excuse me, it would make this thing, which we of course called a flat. Okay, so we had units, longs, and flats. And then what we noticed, I did one day in class, was I just showed the reason we use commas in our numbering system is because this pattern repeats. So I have units, longs, flats, and then when I had 10 of these, it created another quote unit, something that looks very similar to this one over here, except that it is a 10 by 10. It's 10 of these, 10 high and 10 wide. So this started over. So here we have ones, tens, hundreds, thousands. Okay, and so what we want kids to understand when they're doing place value is the smallest number is over here on the right hand side and the biggest number is over here on the left hand side. So that's going to, and then of course as they kept moving along, it would be 10 of these lined up. I don't have 10 of them, but that'd be 10 of those that make a long this size, and then it would be 100 of these would make a flat of this size, and then another cube. So what keeps building here is we keep going from this shape of a cube to this shape of a long to this shape of a flat back to a cube, just a lot bigger cube. Okay, that's good to remember. Okay, so what I'm doing here is notice that I'm using the wooden one, the non-blue one, the wooden one, as what we call our unit, right? So I'm calling that thing my unit, and then everything else is a comparison to the size of the unit. So this is 10 units, this is 100 units, this is 1,000 units. So we call this tens, hundreds, and thousands because it's compared to how big this unit is. So in our base 10 system, this is a 1, 10, 100, 1,000. Okay, so that's what they should have gotten when they were in like first grade, kindergarten, first grade, their place value. Now we're moving up a few years, and let's suppose that they have this. So you're looking at going, well, dude, that's the same thing as we had before, it's just a different color. I said, I agree. And if you remember from a minute ago, what did I say was special about the wooden one? Well, the wooden one was my unit. So that means that this is my unit. That's a 1 right there. It's no longer 1,000, but this is the size of a unit. And what I'm going to do is I'm now going from a unit or a 1 over here to the smaller size. So if this is considered a 1 or a unit, then right here in between is all things that are less than 1 or a fraction of 1. So we need to have a little divider here like this. And again, you're just trying to pay attention and follow along, not really necessarily write down too many notes. You can always go back and add notes later. So here is my 1, or my unit. And so then so here's my 1, then right here would be a long, a 10, and then over here would be hundreds, or a flat, right? So longs, flats are going this way. And here's my unit. So here's my divider. So that means everything over here is less than 1. This is 1 unit right here. This is 1 unit. I'm going to put a little 1 inside there. So that's 1 unit right there. So the question is, what's the next smallest one? Well, the next smallest size would look like this, because it would take 10 of these to make 1 of these. Okay, so I would need 10 of these to make 1 of those. So that is my next smaller one. And so this one is not 1, but it is a 10th of that one. Okay, so it's a little bit smaller. And then the reason it's a 10th is because it would take 10 of these to make 1 unit. All right, so if I only have 1 of them, then we call that a 10th. Okay, so I can put it like this as well. It's just I didn't put it like this originally because it doesn't look like it's the same size, but it actually is. But because of the camera perception, it looks a lot smaller than this, when in fact it's not smaller at all. It's the exact same size. So if I do this, then you can see, okay, well, there would be 10 of these that are lined up. All right, but I'm gonna put it flat now so you can kind of see it. Okay, so then the question is, what's smaller than this? Well, so if we think about, what we did before, the next one down would have been a long that looks like that. And the reason it's a long is because it would take 10 of these to make 1 of these. And then it takes 10 of these to make 1 of those. So this then it takes 1,000 of these. And if you look at that, it looks like 1,000 would fit in here, because I'm going to have 10 going this way and then 10 going that way, and that's going to make up to be 1,000, or excuse me, not 1,000, 100. 100 of these, right? So make 100 of these would make up this whole thing. So I go tenths, so this one is hundredths. Okay. So that's my hundredths. And then my next smaller one is, well, it would take 10 of the next smaller size to make 1 of those there. So that's that one right there. It's barely on my screen. All right. Now the question is, how many of these would it take to make up 1 of those big ones, 1 of these? Well, it would make 1, 2, 3, 4, and then going down and then on the inside. So actually it would be 1,000th. I'm going to write it down here. Okay. So the main thing that I want us to get from today's little activity is this, is that when we start saying that this is a 1, so we're saying that this is comparable to this, right? So these are both units. We called this one a unit when I was going ones, tens, hundreds, thousands. We call this one a unit when I want to be able to show that these are all way smaller than this one. So this is ones, tenths, hundredths, thousandths. What there's not in the middle here is a 1th, right? There's no such thing as that. There's ones, and then it takes 10 of these to make 1 of those, so that's tenths. Then it takes 100 of these to make 1 of those, so that's hundredths. And then it takes 1,000 of these to make 1 of those, so that's thousandths. But if you notice, it's still smallest to biggest, right? So the smallest one is always over here on the right-hand side, and the biggest place value is over here on the left-hand side. Okay, so that's how you can demonstrate decimals. That's what we're doing. So obviously this squiggle line right here represents the decimal point. And what the decimal point does is it separates whole numbers from fraction of numbers. So this is how many whole numbers I have, and over here would be how many fractions of a whole I have. So here I have 1 whole, and then I have a tenth, a hundredth, and a thousandth. So the number I have on the board right here would be 1.111 is what that one would be. We're going to do more of that stuff a little bit later. All right, so the decimal point separates the whole numbers from the fraction of numbers. And the main thing I want my students to understand is how much smaller this one is than this. This is a teeny tiny little number over here. This place value, which is the third place value over, is way smaller than a 1. And it's even smaller than this one. And it's even smaller than this one. So these are the smallest ones, and over here are the biggest ones. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and press pause right now and set up the next thing. We're going to go into a little bit of the algorithm. So here's a good time for you to write down any notes that you might want to use for this understanding part of the decimals. Okay, so as we move forward here, I'm going to do a quick little reminder. It's good for us to keep reviewing old material to make sure that we're not losing any of our skills. And we have done fractions for a little while. So the very first thing I'd like for you to do is to go ahead and press pause and to, you don't have to turn these ones in to the homework. Just go ahead and do them for me real quick. So you're going to go ahead and do, a show. So that means drawing the boxes. So you're showing me how to do each one of these problems. So go ahead and press pause. And then when you get those done, let me know, or not, don't let me know, obviously. I'm just going to start. So go ahead and press pause, and then I'll start doing my lesson. Okay, so hopefully you had a chance to press pause and do these problems. I'm going to go ahead and take a look at this. So I'm going to go ahead and do this first one. I'm guessing most of us probably did something like this, in that we drew a box. Something like that. All right. And then we needed to be in tenths. And we may have noticed that everything was in tenths. So that's kind of nice. So I'm going to go ahead and make my boxes here in tenths. Lines are not real straight. Sorry about that. All right, so I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so there's my this is the size of my box, of my shapes, right? So that's good. So I got tenths. So I need 3 of them colored in. So there's 1 right there. And there's 2 right there. And there's 3. So there's my 3 tenths. That's this first one. And then I'm going to add to that 4 tenths. Now, what's nice about this one is they're the same size pieces. So you may have done some like cross lines going sideways, but we didn't have to do that because since the same size pieces, I don't need to change anything. I can just use those because this is 1 tenth right here, 2 tenths, 3 tenths, and 4 tenths. So then all I have to do is count up what I have. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tenths. So this is equal to 7 tenths. Okay, probably not too bad. Probably not exactly the way you did it, but remember, when we have the same size bases, we don't have to do some vertical lines and horizontal lines. We can just add them together. Okay, so next, I'm gonna do the next problem. Okay, and so if I'm adding these together, then what I would do, I think, most likely is what we did was we would draw in a rectangle. Like that, okay. And then I need them to be into fifths. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so there we go. And then this says to color in 1/5. So I'm gonna go ahead and color in a fifth there. So there's my fifths. Now, the next one was to color in 1/10. And so I'm guessing most of us probably drew those horizontal lines going this way, and you probably drew 10 of them. Now, what I noticed with my box, the way I did this is, man, is it gonna be hard to get 10 in here because I didn't draw my box very big. But what I could also notice is that now that we know how to add fractions, we realize that this has an extra 2 in it, this one doesn't. So really, I just need to multiply this by 2 to make them into tenths, the same size pieces. So that means really I could cut this into tenths. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, 10. So now I see that this is still my 1/5, but what's making up 1/5 now is 2 tenths. And then I need 1 more tenth, so that one would be right here. And so what I have total is 1 tenth, 2 tenths, 3 tenths, out of a total of 10 tenths. So the answer is 3 tenths there. So yes, you could definitely have done horizontal and vertical, but I didn't really need to do that much because it was pretty easy for me to get them in to be the same size pieces. And so then I could just add my 1/10 to my 1/5, which is actually the same as 2 tenths. Okay, let's take a look at one more down here, and you may be picking up on a little theme that I'm doing. There we go. And so, okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and draw this one out. So again, I'm gonna start with my big box here. And so on this one, it says that I want to draw, I'm going to zoom out just a tad. Okay, I'm going to color in 1/5, or excuse me, 1/2. So here's half of my box like that, and I'm going to go ahead and draw that, color that shade in, that side in. So there is my 1/2 of the box. And once again, because I'm stupid and I didn't make my box very big, so it's hard for me to draw them going this way for fifths. But again, because we've noticed that all I have to do is have the same size pieces, well, I could cut these into tenths and then I think it would work out. So I could go, okay, well then I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay. So what I did was I cut this half into fifths and I cut this half into fifths. And so now, if you look at this, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of 10. And then I need to do 1/5 of this whole. So this would be 1/5 of the whole thing right here. Because this is 1 right here. This one is 2. This one is 3. This one is 4. And this one over here is 5. So there's one of them. Here's 2. Here's 3. Here's 4. And there's 5. So there's my whole piece being divided into fifths. And then here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's half of my shape. And then here's my 1/5 more. So now I can count up and I see I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 out of a total of 10. So 7 tenths. So what I'm going to show you here is that a lot of times when we're doing fractions, we don't always have to cut them. And if we can make them easily into the same size pieces, now that we've done some of that work, it might work out a little bit easier. Okay, so we might want to also start looking for the same size pieces. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and pause it one more time, and then we'll take a look at the next thing. Okay, welcome back, everybody. So what we're going to do today is we're going to start looking at some decimals. That's what the original activity was about, having kids understand that as you move farther to the right, the pieces are getting smaller, and smaller, much smaller. The difference between a decimal and the counting numbers that we have is now we're starting at the unit of 1 and then going to the smaller units that are less than 1. So fractions of numbers. So we're going to start with decimals here, and I'm going to put up a couple of problems here and take a look at them. So there we go. This is decimals. So if you notice, this is the exact same picture that we did a second ago. Look at those. Remember all this gibberish down here that you're like, what the heck's that guy doing? It's still there. Here's the problem. The original problem we did was 3 tenths plus 4 tenths. So this is 0.3 or 3 tenths plus 0.4 or 4 tenths. And what I do is I take my shape and I break it up into 10 here, 10 equal pieces, because these are both the same size pieces because they're in that first decimal place. So those are my tenths, and then I colored in 3/10, and I colored in 4/10 for a total of 7/10, just like that. Okay, now we look at the second one here. Now, don't worry, I'm going to do some examples with you guys. This is not all we're going to do, but I want to show you how they're related to fractions. That's what I'm doing right now, is how this is related to fractions. It's exactly related to fractions because I'm actually doing the exact same fraction problems. So originally, we had 1/5 plus 1/10. That's what it was, 1/5 plus 1/10. Well, 1/5 is equal to 2/10. So there's 2/10. So I drew my rectangle here, and then I colored in 2/10. So there's 1/10 and 2/10. And then I colored in my 1/10. So that one's right there. So these are all the same size piece, so a total of 3/10. Okay. And then the bottom one down there is I have I have 1/2 plus 1/5. That was the fraction that we did. 1/2 plus 1/5. So in decimals, 1/2 is written as 0.5 or 5/10, and 1/5 is still 0.2 or 2/10. So I have 0.5 plus 0.2. So here is my tenths. Each one of these is a tenth here. And then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them colored in, or exactly half of it. And then I have 2 more colored in. So I have a total of 7/10. So the main thing I wanted to get from this part right here is that fractions and decimals are very, very similar. You're going to see we do them very similarly. Okay? All right, so now let's take a look at some other decimal problems. Okay. So then, again, this is still showing, right? So you're going to be drawing. And so what if I had 0.5 plus 0.1? Okay, so 0.5 plus 0.1. So what I want students to understand is that these are the same size pieces. And I know they're the same size pieces because they're in the same position. This is tenths and this is tenths. If we're going back to that first demonstration, they're the same size pieces. These pieces would be, so here was my unit, and this is the one that fit inside there, right? So this is they're both, here's my zero, my units. I have 0 ones, and these are tenths. So they're the same size pieces for both of these, okay? So then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna draw a rectangle. And since they are the same size pieces, I'm going to be able to just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Since they're the same size pieces, I'm going to be able to add them into the same rectangle. I don't need to draw 2 different rectangles because these are the same size pieces as those. So here I've got 1/5 or 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, and 5/10 right there. And then I need to add to this 1 more tenth. So that's right here. So then I'll have all the same size pieces. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tenths. Whoops, I keep doing that as fractions. I don't want to do it as a fraction. So it's going to be equal to 0.6 tenths. Okay? Okay, so that one, I'm guessing it's not too bad. So what if we had this problem? So the first question I'd ask students is, which of these is more? Like, which number is bigger, right? Is this number bigger and this number is bigger? And you may or may not be surprised to find the answer out from a lot of students, but a lot of students will say that this one is bigger because that looks like the number 13 and this looks like the number 2. So we're going to talk about that real quick. So if I want to show this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw my shape like I said before. Make sure I'm on the board here. Yep, I am. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and draw. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay, so there's my shape that has tenths in it. And now I'm going to do this shape. I know that shape right now is one of these tenths and then this tenth over here. So there's my 2 tenths, all right? Now I need to do this one. Well, so I know right here that that is the same size as this. So I can go ahead and color that one in right now. I don't have to do anything because that's the same size. Those are both tenths, okay, like that. But this one, hopefully we're starting to realize, is a lot smaller. So this is a lot smaller number than this one is. It was the difference when we were doing the shapes a minute ago. So then what I have to do is I got to break this up into tenths. And now I am going to go horizontally. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. All right. So now what this does is this now broke this thing up into 100 pieces, 100 little teeny tiny squares, all the exact same size. I don't care what the camera makes this one look like compared to that one there. If I had a better camera, that one would look the exact same size as this one or this one or this one. They're all exactly the same size. Clearly, that one's the same size as that one. And so now I have to shade in 3 that are this tiny little size. So the green and the purple, those are all tenths. And then I need this many more. So that is 1, 2, 3, like that. So what I end up with is I have 1, 2, 3 tenths. And then I have 1, 2, 3 100ths. So 0.33 is the answer that I get for that one. Okay, so the only time for decimals that I need to draw a second, I need to draw horizontal lines is if these two are not the same size. All right, so if they're all tenths or they're all or they're hundredths, then I have to draw the horizontals. I have to be able to get 100 shapes in there. Okay, so let's take a look at this one. All right, so here we go. So again, we're showing 0.02 plus 0.03. So look at this, and I say, okay, I need to show tenths. So, all right, so I'm going to show it by drawing this thing. All right, I'm on the board, yep. And if I do this, which I've been doing before, okay, so if I do that, okay, there we go. I've got my lines drawn, but remember, these were tenths, and I don't have any tenths. I don't have any tenths, so I don't even need tenths. Instead, what I need to have drawn are hundredths. So then I'm immediately going to go back this way. All right, so there we go. So now I've taken my 1 that I started with and I've broken it up into these really small pieces here. So now I can show, all right, I've got 2 100ths, 1, 2, and then I have 3 100ths. So that's 1, 2, 3. So my answer is 0.0 because I didn't have any of these filled in. Excuse me, none of these are filled in. And then I have 5 100ths, okay? All right, so let's do one more here, and then we'll see where we're at. All right, so there we go. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw my 1. So if I had a full unit, if it was 1.0, then this whole thing would be colored in. But it's not. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And then I don't have any of those. So I was going to color them in, but I don't have any 1 or tenths. I don't have any tenths there. So I got to get to this smaller size, which is thousandths. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And now I need to start coloring in what I can. All right, so this tells me that I have 7 thousandths. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then it tells me to color in 5 thousandths. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like that. So now what I have colored in here, I now have a full tenth colored in. So I have 0 point, this thing's whole thing's not colored in, 1/10, and then 2 units. So 0.12 is the way that I do this. Okay? Okay, so that kind of shows what happens if I'm adding just all decimals together. Well, what if I'm adding something that looks like this? Okay, so 0.7 plus 0.6. So I'm going to show this. So that means I'm going to start off with drawing a big old deal like this. Make sure that I'm on the board. Yep. All right. So now I need to break this into tenths. All right. So there we go. So there's my unit that I have drawn, and it's broken up into tenths. And now I have 7 of these. So let me color in my 7. 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So there are my 7 tenths right there. Okay. And then it tells me that I need to add 6 more. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. But I notice that now it's full. So I still have 3 more I need to add. So that means I need another one of these to draw. And I need to break it into tenths again, because that's the size that I'm dealing with. Okay. And now I've done 3 of these, 1, 2, 3, and I have 3 more to do. So there's 4, 5, and 6. Okay. So now I've shown what I had. I had 0.7 plus 0.6, or excuse me, 0.7 plus 0.6. And so then I'm going to have a full complete one. So this whole thing is filled in. I have the 0.7 plus 3 more gave me a full one and 3 extras. So that now means that I have 1.3 complete. So I've got 1 complete unit filled in, and then I have 3 additional tenths. So 1.3. It's no longer 0 point, it's now 1 point. So that's my answer, 1.3. Okay? So that's how you show if it goes beyond 1, like this whole thing gets filled in, that's no big deal. Just go ahead and draw another one and then fill in that I have 1 full one and then whatever left over out of that one. Okay, so that's all we're doing for today as far as decimals go, is we are showing how to add decimals. and how to get them, you know, to 1.3, or sometimes you might have 0.7, 0.07 plus 0.05, and that gives you 0.12, so 1/10 and 200, so 12 hundredths is how you would say that. And so this is what we're doing today. So tonight's homework is going to light on this, not too heavy on this, but I am going to have you guys do some order of operations because we didn't get to do a whole lot of practice on order of operations. So there will be some order of operations problems. Okay, that's it for today, and I'm sorry for the delay in getting this out to you. And have a good couple of days.